Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique grasp of death and how to relate it to other techniques in the American Kenpo system. So keep in mind, this is not a comprehensive list and it's not family groupings. What it is just different avenues that you can explore to relate this technique to other techniques in the system. So let's talk through a relationship through, let's say, a general rule in this case. We're going to use the general rule of 2 to 1. So what does that mean? The general rule of 2 to 1 means do not use 2 of your extremities or weapons against one of theirs. You go, well, why? Why is this a general rule? Well, because of the fact that it's going to put us at a strategic disadvantage. So in this case, if I were to use 2 of my hands to be occupied against one of theirs, in this case, they have a strategic advantage because they have 3 weapons available left to them, and we only have 2. Sounds like a good rule, right? So why would you want to break it? So let's talk through it as it goes through this technique. So what's the idea here? The idea here is they're trying to choke us out. They're trying to knock us out or potentially kill us. That's where it gets the name grasp of death, right? So I want to stop that. So how am I going to do that? So in this case, I could grab it with my right hand and do my pulling to try and stop them from choking us out. But, okay, fine. We have the rule against 2 to 1, so I don't want to do that. But that puts us at a strategic disadvantage. How? Because they're probably as strong or stronger than us, and they may have taken us by surprise, so they may have us in an awkward situation. So we need to level the playing field or even get the upper hand. So how do we do that? So in this case, we do it by bending that rule of 2 to 1. So we do it by bringing our left hand into play, sliding them forward, and then forcing them forward. So I'm having a push-pull situation with both of my arms and my body. So that gives us that strategic advantage. So let's apply this strategic advantage again to this rule and apply it in a different technique. So in this case, something like a crossing talons, where they grab us and we look at them and go, okay, so we're going to go 2 against 1 here to get them to bend over. You go, well, why is it okay here? The reason why it's okay here is because we are starting to make them bend and get their head below their waist and then take advantage of that. Okay? So let's now move this on into a new situation, something like a snapping twig, where they're pushing us and potentially punching us. Okay? So let's talk through this and how it fits back into the other two. What's going on here? They're using the dimension of depth and then the dimension of width to try and take advantage of us. So we would say, okay, how do we stop that? Same thing that we did back in grasp of death. In this case, we're doing it slightly different. What we're doing is we're controlling that depth and we're eliminating that width all at the same time. Where, as we did in crossing talon, we were doing it primarily against height. So what we're doing here through these 3 techniques is controlling zones by using and bending that rule of 2 to 1. So in this case, by isolating that elbow, isolating that hand, and forcing them to turn away from us, we're isolating that right hand. Okay? So now let's flip it. Okay? Up to now, we've been talking about us doing 2 to 1. Let's talk about them doing 2 to 1. So in this case, they can do something like a darting mace. So the idea here is, I want to get my right hand out. This is my best weapon I have available to me, so I want it out. But they have 2 of their hands holding me. So that, again, it's very similar to what we did in grasp of death. I want to get my hand out, but I can't do it alone. So what I do is I employ, this case with the punch to the face, as we push and pull, and then we're able to get our right hand out and then use it. Okay? So let's take this to a different situation, something like a mace of aggression. Guess what? This gives us even a better strategic advantage. Why? Because now they're doing 2 against 0. So that allows us to have a huge range of things that we can do. So we can do things like pin their hands, take advantage of it with something like a raking mace, or even something really extraordinary like just ignore that completely because they're occupied and just go directly into something like a disruptive twins. Okay? So now that we've gone through all that, let's go back and take a look at the initial idea of them trying to choke us out and how they're doing it. Okay, so in this case, with grasp of death, they're choking us primarily on the side. We're bent over and they're primarily cutting off our blood flow, but potentially even our oxygen, but mostly on the side. Okay? We can then have a vertical version of this that does it in a different way. And this would bring in something like an escape from death, where they're actually going to the front and just not primarily to the side, secondarily onto the side. Okay, we can then bring that to the front and do something like unlocking horns. We're going to do the exact same thing, primarily to the front and somewhat to the side. Okay, so that brings in all these arm things, but that's not the only way in which they can do it. They can still do things with both the sides and the front at the same time and bring in something like a circle wing, where we have to deal with the choke from the rear, using both hands and full compression around both the sides and the front, but primarily from the front. You can then take that to the front and do what we call the classic movie choke, where they're choking us from the front, right? So we can, guess what? This takes us back into where we were earlier. We can do something like a destructive twins or evasive aggression again. Okay, but then there's another way in which you can do this. They do this cross choke, where they're actually choking both sides and not the front at the same time, and that gets us something like a cross of death. Okay, so now that we've talked through that, let's talk through how we did all these relationships. We did it through how they're choking us and the points of the neck in which we're doing it, and through the rule of 2 to 1 and how we can bend it. Hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system just a little bit better. Thank you very much.